Hi folks, welcome to this second video of my tutorials for the fireworks festival Knit Along. In this video we're going to talk a little bit more about two colors brioche and a little bit more about contrasting color, and then I'll give you some tips for avoiding ripping out all your work. If you do some mistakes, you don't have to worry because we have tricks. We knitters have many tricks. But it's very important that you understand the basic of brioche and how the stitch is created, so you can use brioche for whatever you like. Then we're going to talk about, of course, the syncopation, which is one of the main features of the shawl. Syncopation is this line of stitches which is different from the line beside that, and I'm gonna talk about that later. And then we will see again about the increases that you have to make at the beginning of the shawl. So this will cover all the lights part of the shawl, which is I believe chart C, D and E, if I'm not mistaken. So you should be able to go and complete all that part of the shawl before we go into the fireworks fun, which is making these little shapes here and then the border down here. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this video. I'm going to try to stay on camera this time because I know last week I was I was always going around, so you have to follow me, and sorry, but this is my really first video tutorial, so I'm not the pro. And please let me know if you have questions. I'm going to answer in the Ravelry forum, of course, the Ravelry group, or of course you can contact me on Instagram, on Ravelry, or whatever you like. Let me see your shows because I'm really curious to see what you're doing. So let's get started. If there is something we all love, it's yarn and colors. So let's explore a little bit more about color combination, and let's see what's the best contrast you have to look for. So this color here is called Eric Northman. It's a very deep red, very beautiful red, of course, from La Bien-Aimée Merino Singles. And if you want to use this color as your main color in place of my blue, it's perfectly fine. But you have to find, of course, something that matches, that goes well with this one. And I was thinking about that. What do you think? This one is called Tang, and you can see there is a little bit of red, but it's a really different shade of red. So whatever you do with this yarn, it will never melt into this one. So there will always be a lot of contrast between these two colors. I think they will work pretty well together. So if you have questions with your color combination, please post your pictures, and I'm here to help you, of course, to choose the right yarn because it's really fun. Let's go back to our two-color brioche, and I would like to demonstrate a little bit more of the stitches themselves because it's always nice to have a bit more of practice. Of course, maybe at this time you have completed your sky part, but this is a little reminder for any of you that wants to see a little bit more of two colors brioche. So let's take care of the edge stitches. I am on the right side, which is called the dark side in my pattern. I'm going to knit the first two stitches, and then of course drop the yarn over. You remember you have a yarn over from the wrong side row, and then in the last stitch, and now I can start brioching. The first stitch is always a slip one yarn over. So to slip one yarn over, once again, bring the yarn to the front of the needles, put your needle into the next stitch as if to pull, take the stitch together with your yarn over and pull them out of the needles, so like that. Now we're going to brioche knit into the next stitch, sorry. So the next stitch is this stitch here, which is a combination of this dark loop and this light loop. Remember, this is only one stitch, it's not two stitches. So we're going to put the needle inside both loops of the stitch, like that, both loops, and knit. But remember, this is the spot where we have to increase. So to increase and make a bark yarn over bark, we need to knit one without dropping the stitch from the needle. We're going to yarn over. So bring the yarn to the front of the needle like that, and knit again in the same stitch. And now you can drop the stitch from the left hand needle, and as you can see here, you have 3 loops coming out of one stitch. This is the bark yarn over bark, brioche knit, yarn over, brioche knit. I'm going to demonstrate that in the English style, with the English style method. For now you can see it with the continental. So we're going to continue brioching. The next stitch is a slip one yarn over. The next stitch is a normal brioche knit. Then again slip one yarn over and brioche knit. Slip one yarn over, yarn to the front, slip the stitch, carry the yarn with you, and knit. So now I'm going to demonstrate it with the English style knitting. So the next stitch is a slip one yarn over. I need to bring the yarn to the front of the work. Then I'm going to insert my needle into the stitch as if to pull, bring the yarn with me like that, and now I need to brioche knit the next stitch. So I'm going to insert the tip of the needle into both loops on my needle, and then with the yarn here I'm going to knit the stitch like so. Once again I have a slip one yarn over, so the yarn was in the back because I've just knit the stitch. So I'm going to bring the yarn to the front again and slip the next stitch with the yarn like so. Now here I'm going to do the increase, so the bark yarn over bark, which means go into the stitch as if to knit, knit without dropping the stitch. Then now we're going to yarn over and then knit again. So this creates again 3 stitches out of one stitch. I hope you can see that. So this is the bark yarn over bark. Yarn to the front because we have to slip one yarn over the last stitch, and then this stitch here is just knit because it's the edge stitch. So we're going to knit the stitch. Then here we have the yarn over to drop. We drop the yarn over and then we just knit the next 2 stitches. Okay, so we've just completed the row with the dark color. Okay, right side or dark side, dark color. Now we're going to slide the stitches to the other side of the needle, and we're going to do the light color, which is of course coming from the front of the work, because with the light color on the dark side we have to brioche purl. So remember, the edge stitches are always worked only with the dark color, so we're going just to slip the stitches onto the needle. We have only 3 now because we dropped the yarn over, so don't forget it's only 3. You can put the stitch marker here so you're sure you're not slipping stitches you shouldn't slip. The first stitch here is a brioche purl, so we're going to go into both loops of the stitch and purl, brioche purl. Next stitch is slip one yarn over, yarn to the front. It's already to the front because we are purling. So we're going to take the first of these three. You see you have 3 loops here. We're going to take the first one and slip it with the yarn, and now we're going to purl the center stitch and slip one yarn over the next one. Now we're going to brioche purl, slip one yarn over, brioche purl, slip one yarn over, brioche purl, and now I'm going to demonstrate in English style. Let me just take some more yarn. Okay, so we have to slip one yarn over, yarn to the front, slip the stitch, and now we need to purl. So we have to complete the yarn over, which means going around the needle and bringing the yarn again to the front of the work. Go into the stitch and purl, like so. Next stitch is a slip one yarn over, so we're going to slip the stitch, bringing the yarn with us, and now we have to complete the yarn over, so we wrap the yarn around the needle and we're ready to purl the next stitch, like so. So remember, now we have the increase here. The first stitch we need to slip one yarn over, the second stitch we have to purl, so once again wrap your yarn and bring it to the front again and purl your stitch, and then the last one to slip one yarn over and then the last stitch is again a brioche purl, so yarn to the front again, go into the stitch and purl, and then these last 3 stitches, of course, we have to slip on the needle. So this is the dark side worked with the light color. You can see the brioche coming out here, and of course on the other side you have the white here and dark color here. So now we're going to turn, because we have both yarns coming from the same side of the work, so we can turn the work and work the light side. We're going to start always with the dark color. First thing we need to do, edge stitches. So we're going to knit the first 2 and yarn over, purl the next stitch. These are our edge stitches. Now slip one yarn over, yarn to the front, slip the stitch, and this stitch now is a brioche purl, because we are working on the on the wrong side, which is called the light side. So we're going to bring the yarn again to the front of the work and purl the next stitch. Slip one yarn over, brioche purl, slip one yarn over, brioche purl, slip one yarn over, brioche purl, slip one yarn over, brioche purl. I'm gonna do it English style, yarn to the front, slip one yarn over, and then to brioche purl, remember you have to complete the yarn over. So you're going to wrap the yarn which is coming from the front, wrap it around the needle, and then you're ready to purl. Don't forget that. And it's again slip one yarn over, yarn is already to the front because we just purled, and now we have to wrap around the needle and purl. Slip one yarn over. Once again, before you put the needle inside the stitch, remember you have to complete the yarn over. Wrap the yarn around the needle and then you're ready to purl. Last stitch is slip one yarn over, And then here, remember, you have these 3 stitches, which are the edge stitches. We need to make a yarn over. So first we're going to pull the first stitch here, and then here we're going to make a yarn over and then knit the next 2 stitches. So this is very important. Always remember that these stitches are always worked with the dark color, never with the light color. So this is also a reminder for you if you're not sure on which side you are. Just remember that the yarn over has to be made on the wrong side of the work, so on the light side of the work, and has to be dropped on the right side, okay? So this is a reminder for you, don't forget that. So make your yarn over and complete the row. Then you're ready to slide the stitches on the other side. So I'm gonna work this row with you, and then I'm gonna show you some tips for avoiding frogging your project if you made some mistakes. So the first 4 stitches now are always slipped with the light color, and now you see the yarn is coming from the back, so you have to knit. And you see you have to knit because this column here should remind you that this should continue to be a knit column. So if you pull here, for example, let's say you want to pull this stitch, you will create a bar, you see? So this column will be broken. So this reminds you that here you have to knit. So if your yarn is accidentally coming to the front, from the front of the work, you know it's wrong. It has to come from the back. So now you just brioche knit, slip 1 yarn over, 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 brioche knit. Or let me do it English style. Yarn to the front for slip 1 yarn over and knit. Yarn to the front for a slip 1 yarn over and brioche knit. Again, yarn to the front for a slip 1 yarn over and brioche knit. And now we're ready to slip the stitches. So you know that the yarn now is coming from the front on the other side, because now we are just brioche knit the last stitch, so the yarn is falling to the back of the work. So leave the yarn where it is. Slip the last 4 stitches and you've completed also the light side of the work. So you see, this is the light side because the light color is more visible here, and this is the dark side because the dark color is more visible. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to avoid ripping out all your work. So you may already know about lifelines. Lifelines are, of course, lines of yarn which run through your work and helps you, if you made a mistake, to avoid ripping out all the work. So you can put a lifeline in your work at one point, and then after a while, if you made a mistake, you can rip the work up to the lifeline. So if you try to pull the stitches, they won't come out of the lifeline. I'm going to show you how to put a lifeline in the work. You need, of course, it's better if you use another color, not the color that you're using in your project. And you also need a smooth yarn. Something like cotton is fine, and it should be better to have a thinner yarn than the one you're using for your project. So you use this kind of yarn here, this thin yarn. You need a tapestry needle, So you're going to thread the yarn into the needle, and what we're going to do is take the needle and thread this needle through all your stitches. So starting from the first one, like so, put all your stitches onto the needle, like so. Try not to split the yarn, and of course remember when you're doing this with brioche stitches that when you go and find a brioche stitch like this, you have of course to catch both strands on your needle, okay? So don't forget your strands, okay? So let me just quickly put the stitches onto the lifeline, and I'm gonna show you a little bit of ripping. Okay, try not to split the yarn. Right, so pull the yarn like this. So now you have all your stitches onto this yarn here. You can cut the yarn and tie a knot. Please tie a knot, because you don't want the stitches to fall out of the lifeline. So you can tie a knot, whatever you like. I'm gonna tie a little knot like that. Okay, so basically now you have a loop where your stitches are secured. Now you can complete your row or whatever. You can just go on with your knitting. Of course, take note of where you put the lifeline, so you know that in case you rip out your work to the lifeline, you know where you were. And you're not guessing, oh my god, which row was that? Okay, so now you can just continue knitting your brioche stitches. Don't worry about any mistakes, because you now be able to fix them. And I'm gonna show you a little bit. Let me just make a couple of rows and then I will show you how to rip it out. Okay, so let's pretend you made a mistake in this row. You want to undo these 2 rows. What you do, take your needle, you have the lifeline in place, you can see the lifeline running through the stitches here. This is our lifeline here. Hope you can see that. So you basically take out your work from the needles, and no worries, because you have the lifeline in place, and start ripping out. No fear. Okay. So that's the nice thing. When you reach the lifeline, you see the lifeline here. When you reach the lifeline and try to pull, you will see that your yarn won't come out anymore, because the stitch is secured on the lifeline itself. You see the stitch here, it's right inside. You see the lifeline. So of course if you try to pull, it won't come out. So now you are basically able to pick up the stitches again and put them onto the needles. Just follow the lifeline and try to catch all your loops. Don't forget the yarn overs. It's useful if you count the stitches. So for example, you know this is a normal stitch. Let's say normal stitch, it's 1 loop stitch. This is a 2 loop stitch. This is 1 loop stitch. This is 2 loops stitch. 1 loop, 2 loops. This one should be 1 loop, and it should be a white one. So you see, it's not difficult, but you really need to follow the lifeline, because you know this is 2, this is 1, this one is 2, and you see where is the yarn over? It's here. So you just gather the yarn over and the stitch. This is just 1, this is 2, so gather the yarn over together with the stitch. 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So it's really important that you know where you stopped, where you put the lifeline. If you're not sure, you can also take a picture of your work with the lifeline in place, so you know how the stitches were mounted on the needle before taking out the needles. So it will be easier for you to pick up the stitches correctly. And once again, so my last stitch here, if you have troubles, just pull the lifeline up and you will immediately see the stitch. See? It's here. And then you have this last stitches, the edge stitches. There you go. You're ready to go. You can leave the lifeline in place, or you can take it out. And to take out the lifeline, maybe once you've completed a big part and you decide to put the lifeline higher in your work, you can just cut it. If you don't want to undo the knot, you cut it and then you pull. Just make sure you're holding the stitches onto the needle, and then you pull the lifeline out. There is the lifeline, and there is your work. So now let's see about syncopation. You will see in the pattern some stitches are highlighted with blue in the charts and also in the written instructions. You know that those stitches are being syncopated. What does it mean? It means that the stitches we are going to brioche knit or brioche purl in that particular case are the opposite. So for example, we know that we are on the dark side and we are talking about the light color. We know that we have to brioche purl this stitch here, this column here. This one is a brioche purl column. So in the syncopation we are basically transforming this brioche purl column in a brioche knit column, which means that this stitch here, which we will normally brioche purl, we're going to brioche knit, and this will create a little bit of knit stitches here. So I'm going to show you now with the light color. So for this section I really recommend using stitch markers because they are going to save your life, and it's up to you, of course. If you want to mark the stitch you have to syncopate, or if you want to mark the stitch as I did in my pattern, placing a ring before and after the stitch you need to syncopate. This is maybe better for the lace part of the shawl, for the fireworks. So I'm going to show you how I did my syncopation. Okay, so I've used this kind of stitch markers here, these rings. Of course, if you're following the pattern now, you're going to have a lot more than this. This is really a small piece, a little piece, but I'm going just to demonstrate on one random stitch, just to show you how it works, the syncopation. So syncopation is made with the light color, okay? So let's say we want to syncopate this middle stitch here, okay? We're going to work normally to the stitch we want to syncopate. So we're going to slip these 3 stitches and then brioche purl, slip 1 yarn over, purl, because this is the increase. Let me get some more yarn. Okay, so slip 1 yarn over, brioche purl, slip 1 yarn over, brioche purl. So let's say we want to syncopate the stitch here. So we slip 1 yarn over, then we place a stitch marker. Slip marker, I don't know what it is, a slip marker. Anyway, a stitch marker before the stitch. Okay, so this stitch we should brioche purl because it's a brioche purl. But now we're going to brioche knit normally, like so. Now we're going to place the second stitch marker after the stitch we just worked. So we know that the stitch in between these markers here is the syncopated stitch. Okay, so we just finish our row normally. You of course follow the instructions in the pattern, so you know what to do. Alright, so as you can see here, I forgot one increase, but it's just I'm just demonstrating here, not going to rip it out because I just want to show you how to behave on the light side of the work, because this stitch now is a brioche knit stitch, is not a brioche purl stitch anymore. So with the dark color we don't do anything special, we just do our brioche knitting. So remember here I made a mistake because I didn't increase, but it's okay. And I'm trying to knit slowly, but of course this is just it's nothing special. So once you get to the stitch, the syncopated stitch, you just slip the markers and treat the stitch normally. So you just slip the stitch, slip 1 yarn over, slip the marker and continue. So you didn't do anything of course with the dark color. We're going to do something with the light color now. And of course for this row I'm just showing the continental style, showing it in continental style because it's really the same thing. You don't need to do anything special. So we're ready to work the light color now. I'm going to slip the first stitches, which are the stitches of the border. Okay, so we know this is a brioche knit. You see the column, it's a brioche knit. So brioche knit, slip 1 yarn over, brioche knit. Just basically go where the first stitch marker is, working normally. So just a brioche knit. Okay, so now we have the stitch before is always a slip 1 yarn over, then we have the first stitch marker. We're going to slip the first stitch marker, and now this stitch here is not a brioche knit anymore, it's a brioche purl. So we're going to brioche purl the stitch like so. Then we slip the marker and we continue as usual, so brioche knit to the end of the row, just like that. Okay, and now let's see how it looks. So from the back you will see this, a long column of knit stitches, which here breaks down in purl, brioche purl 1 and 2, you see. On the other side let's see, on the other side you see the column of brioche purl here. This is going to be a new column of brioche knit. You see the difference here? So this color is now going to pop also on the dark side. This is the main purpose of the syncopation. So I think now you have all the information you need to complete the lights part of the shawl, which is chart C, D and E. So you can have fun and play a little bit with the syncopation now, and don't forget your lifelines so you can knit easily and without worries about mistakes. And I'll see you next week for the fun part, which is the fireworks and the brioche lace. Have fun, guys. Bye.